know what it is. You know what it ain't. It's your boy Flashay Ray. You know my name. You know my gang. And I'm doing what I usually do, talking that talk. And I'm not here at an undisclosed location this time. I'm at the corner. If you don't know, you should know. That's
8838 Arbor Creek Drive.
8838 Arbor Creek Drive. And I'm here with the owner. So much more than that. We will definitely get into that. I'm glad y'all here. You can be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us right now. And this is, no further ado, this is Miss Amy. Amy Goudy, if we want to even be technical.
Yes.
But yes,
Or
this
Boo
is.
Goudy, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. All right. So, oh man, you got so much. We got history together as far as,
Facts.
so much you done for my friends, me, myself, and just Charlotte. Honestly, who is Miss Amy?
Well, lately I've been calling myself the Oracle, like the lady from the Matrix who makes the cookies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because people come and talk to me. But I'm also a businesswoman. I'm definitely a mother. I'm the godmother with a capital T and a capital G.
There you go. Tell them.
I'm nice, I guess, but I'm also, not to be fucked with. So, I think that's a good balance, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So, with how I met you, I'll say this was probably.
I don't even remember when I met you. Okay, well, hit me with that story.
Yeah, look, so I remember when we met. So, I don't know what year it was. I know that it was probably about.
Probably 2013.
Yeah,
probably,
okay.
I would say, right around there.
All right, so we're going to go with 2013.
We'll take that.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
We'll take that.
So, Moolah had said that it's this woman I want y'all to meet. I talked to her and she wanted to manage me. She wanted.
Oh,
yeah,
actually, I do remember.
Mm-hmm.
It was the radio rehab show that Forever FC did, and he opened for them, and you guys were there. And I think that's when I first met you because I knew him. He had come over with Jimmy, but it was
right.
it was at that show because you and she came to that show.
Yes.
And that's when I met you guys. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I do remember.
And then I remember coming to the dojo. That was just a whole experience within itself. I even.
You gonna tell him what the dojo is?
Yeah. Look, I was about to say, if with the dojo, it's a in-house studio where. The magic happens. Shit. For real, it is. I usually, when I describe it to people, I say if you want it to be anybody in music in a certain span, you came through the dojo. Like it's not even it's not a question. It's a fact. So it's starting off even with Forever FC. That was was that your first crack at the music here?
No, well, so I.
Oh yeah, you tell me.
Well, so people have heard the story, but I was into hip hop promotion when I lived in Colorado. So this was in the mid '90s, and I moved to Charlotte, and I kind of got out of it, but it was still, I always loved hip hop. I was involved in hip hop, and Ryan, hi, I'm Rye. Lived down the street, and he came to the house. I'm not going to get into all the details, but came to the house with some friends. We got to talking, and when I told him that what I had done in Colorado, he was like, "Oh, I've got these friends. They were doing UFO. I don't remember if you remember that, but they were doing parties. This was 2008, 2009, and so they were trying to do parties, and he was like, "Oh, can you help them?" And so then people just started coming around, and people just started hanging out at my house, and probably the fact that I had people smoke in my garage was probably part of it, and I would basically bake cookies. Really, it was like I was making chicken tenders and fettuccine alfredo. But people just started hanging out, and so then when I found out that that there was people who wanted to rap, okay, well, I know the industry. I don't want y'all to get screwed over, so I'll manage you. But really, I never was a manager. Now that I really understand the industry and understand like what a manager does, I was really more of a record label even before I was a record label because I was investing, having the studio. Funny story. The reason we got the studio was because Lute was recording at Brian Gandy's house, and Brian Gandy's parents did gospel recording in their studio, and they kept hearing Lute.
And Lute ain't
And
gospel.
Lute doesn't know how to
Well,
not
he gospel
curse.
to us.
Right, but he don't know how not to curse. And they had a no cursing policy, and Lute could not abide by that policy. So I was like, oh, God, okay. So I had extra space in my house, which is what we now call the dojo. And so I went and bought equipment so that they could record in my house, so they would have a place to record that we didn't have to pay for recording time. And then from there, to your point, everybody, word kind of got out, and so then, you know, people were creating music there, producers were coming, people were collabing. You know, if somebody wanted to do a feature, they would come through. So, you know, pretty much almost every rapper, with the exception of a few, has at least come to my house once, if not
seen it.
right, if not hung out and, you know, recorded. So yeah, so then, and then it, you know, it ended up also being a space for people to collab, not just collab musically, but also to engage with each other. I mean, the number of deep conversations even you and I have had, you know, people coming and asking for me for my advice. We've had parties there. You know, there's been a lot of communal activity. And so I always, you know, I think about it, and I grew up that way. You know, my parents were very active in the church, but the Bible studies that was like the college Bible study would be at my house. My mom was youth director at a church for a while. And then, you know, every kid that ran away from home, my parents would let sleep on the couch. There was foreign exchange students would come and live. So like, I grew up having people in my house, so it was just a natural progression for me to have people in my house.
Right. So okay, we're gonna go into how everyone knows you, but people don't know other sides of you, your upbringing. So what? I mean, where are you? Where were you born?
I was born in Chicago. I'm biracial, but I was raised by white people. I say that proudly, though, because they knew what they were getting with me. They actually had to, you know, this is crazy. I was born in 1966 before all the miscegenation laws got reversed. So when I was born, I could not legally be adopted into a white family nor into a black family because transracial adoption was illegal. And so because I was adopted within the family, my mother who raised me is my biological aunt. They had to sign papers saying that they knew I was of Negro descent and would not return me to the state. And so then, they adopted my sisters who were Pacific Islander and white. They were also biracial. And so my parents decided that they didn't want us, as white and Midwestern as they were aware enough that they didn't want us to have to deal with racism. So they moved us to California. So I really grew up racially neutral because, you know, especially in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, it was like hippies. You know, everybody was. It was
Right.
a lot more free love then than there is today. Right.
The progressiveness. That's
it
where
was,
it started.
Yeah,
well,
it was.
what we know of.
Right. It was coming right off the civil rights movement, and so I really didn't deal with anything racially charged until I got to college. But also musically, I grew up. My parents were both music majors when they met, and so my father, you know, white guy, but played in a jazz band, played upright bass. One of my sisters listened to nothing but like Supertramp and Elton John and David Bowie. My other sister listened to nothing but R&B, Stevie Wonder, you know, Martha and the Shirelles or whatever. Martha, I can't remember her name, but you know, I see the record cover. Over there in the case is actually the original Stevie Wonder Songs in the Key of Life that I still have from 1970, when it came out. And then my mother was an operatic soprano and listened to, you know, classical. So I grew up, even though I have zero talent, my parents, you know, taught piano lessons, taught vocal lessons. So I grew up around music with them. But I also grew up in a very open, very engaged environment. And then I was in California. I lived in California most of my life. And then I moved to Denver in like 1994. And that's really where I got very involved in hip hop culture because it was so small and compact. I used to tell people there's only 25 black people in Denver and 15 of them played for the Broncos. So, who I knew all 15 that played for the Broncos. If you go to my Facebook, you'll see pictures. So then I got very involved. I did, I mentioned before, I did promotions. I did an event with the Lost Boys. I did an event with the Rock Nation, Onyx. Promoters usually cover each other, you know what I'm saying? So, you get me on my show, I'll get you in yours. So I was backstage for pretty much any event, Mobb Deep, Busta Rhymes, Leaders of the New School, De La Soul, just anybody who came through Denver, I was backstage hanging out with them. Redman, so, in fact, actually, we promoted the Redman show, now I think about it. So, I was very involved in that. And then, like I said, in 2000, I moved here.
So, what about your father? What do you?
Oh, my biological father?
Yeah, because you talked about, your mother's side and your stepdad that, that raised you. Well, your aunt, correct?
Yeah, well, my parents, they adopted me when I was 6 months old. So as far as they're my parents, that's
right?
my mom and dad.
Correct. Okay.
But my biological father, I actually met him because I was in the family. So we kind of, my grandma helped me find him, and when I was 24, I met him, and it was so crazy because again, racially neutral, race was never really an issue for me. John Amos, who you might know of from Coming to America and Good Times, that was my godfather. They lived across the street from me, right? So
wow.
at 5 years old, that's the representation of a black man. So it's funny because everybody calls him America's father. No, that's I claim him. That's and his daughter and I are still best friends. So I grew up in a very diverse environment. That being said, being as fair as I am, I couldn't really understand being a black person. I knew I felt different and I claimed it, and my parents never tried to pass me and made sure I was proud of my ancestry, but I didn't get it, right? I thought my father probably looked like Common or something because I was like, as fair as I am, he probably was pretty fair. And so when I finally met my real father, he was very brown skinned. And the crazy part is he was running numbers when he was 10 in Harlem. He moved to New Jersey, and he was trying to get away from his family because his father was whatever. But he lied and said that he was 18 when he was 16 and went into the military, fought in the Korean War, got addicted to heroin, came back to the U.S., was dealing drugs. This is in whatever the Korean War is, the 50s, right? So went to Rikers Island for 7 years, gets out, and decides to change his life, becomes an artist, moves to Chicago, and becomes a street artist, which is where he met my biological mother. So she was 18, he was 35. He was a pimp for a while. What
kind of artist was he?
Portraits.
Okay.
So, and actually, if you go to the house, I have one of his pieces, but he was really relatively well known. People know of his art. But again, I have no talent. My mother could sing, and I have no talent.
You got talent.
No, I have no. Talent. I can't draw.
Look at your life. You don't know what I'm saying?
I got brains.
Talent.
I got brains, but I don't. I have no creative talent. I have a creative eye. But he was a pimp, a legit had hose pimp, and he was a Muslim, and he actually the job he had right before I met him was artist in resident at Malcolm X College. So he was super pro-black militant, you know what I mean? So when I met him, my pendulum went, and I was I started dating this guy from Republic of New Africa, and I was Marcus Garvey, the whole nine. And then there was a long period of time where I dated a guy who was Nation, was 5%. So I got real militant, and I've kind of, I'm kind of middle of the road now. But yeah, my real father really shifted my viewpoint once I met him.
So how does that translate to your life now, being a biracial woman, and how do you feel in the current climate with the racial tension being up? How do you feel yourself in just being a biracial woman?
Well, for me, it's different because I'm very cognizant of how I look. But I always will say I really empathize with trans people, with people who are transsexual, because I understand how it feels to be in a body that you don't think you look like or isn't familiar to you, because who I feel I am and what I look like is different. But I'm also very aware of what I look like. So I've never tried to pass. I've never lied to anybody and said I was white, but definitely the white lady has come out when necessary. You know what I'm saying? Like if I have to handle business, or if I have to get one of my godchildren out of jail, or I have to talk to a lawyer, or I have to, handle, my income side hustle where I actually make my money, my voice will change, the pitch will change, I will ride on what the other person's assumption is, right? So, most black people can tell when they meet me or talk to me or whatever off the bat.
When you look at you, I mean, you can tell you're biracial, period.
Well, but you're surprised. There are a lot of people who don't believe me. I had this one lady at a job, and she would she would walk me around, and she'd be like, "Oh my God, I just found out. Did you know she's black? Can you believe it? She's black. I would never have known." Like, she really was freaked out by it. I was the carnival sideshow. But so I mean, I'm not gonna say I haven't used how I look to my advantage, but I will say typically it's been to the advantage of the people of color in my life, right? So obviously my daughter is brown skinned. Everybody around me, like I'm really not around too many of the Caucasians on a social basis. Yeah,
right. I was gonna say when I be around you, it's very rare. I think I've made it seem like one or two friends that you had that are white that came to the house.
The thing that's funny is even my one friend, Christy, she's very blonde hair, blue eyed, but her stepfather's black and her siblings are biracial. So same thing with her. You look at her and you make an assumption of her opinions and how she thinks. But that's the kind of people, I always talk about my white women on Facebook, because I have this whole crew of females who I've been friends with over, the years. Every one of them is woke. Every one of them is pro-black, they are definitely allies. They're like, I understand my power, my privilege, and what I need to do to stand up, for my sisters of color, my brothers of color. So, the white people that are close to me and around me are basically, have the same mindset and the same cultural understanding that I approach with.
Yeah, and I just think in general, I mean, if we've had several conversations, but I think in general right now, it's to a point where I think things are changing. Yeah. Like it's people are, I mean, don't get me wrong, you do see the, I would say the more open racism in the modern day sense of it, because to be honest, it's not nothing with your grandparents or my grandparents. Like a black man 70 years ago couldn't go out and possibly not return from home. And not saying that doesn't happen now with police brutality and all this other, but it was completely different then. So
it's really interesting because there's some things that have definitely improved, but there's also a lot of places we've gone back. So like I said, growing up as a kid in the 70s, there was this whole freedom and everybody kind of loving each other. The other thing too is it's very geographical. Living, if you look at California, coastal California, which is Los Angeles or San Francisco and stuff, is very intermingled and culturally diverse. But when you get to Orange County or you start going into Central, it becomes very racist. And Colorado, like you would think that Colorado would be like, oh, the mountains and it's great and it's, there's tree huggers. Yeah, but they're super racist. That was one of the reasons I was so happy to move to Charlotte, because at least you know who you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? Like, and within the city proper, it's really not that bad comparative to other places. But you get out into China Grove and Salisbury and stuff. Okay, it starts to get a little different, right?
Too.
But Gastonia too. But the thing is, at least you know who you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? Like, one thing I'll say about the South is you know who's gonna put on a white coat and a white hat later on in the day. In Colorado and California, it didn't used to be as obvious. Now, under the current administration and the current political climate,
Right.
you have people being emboldened. So you have, the guy that sat in the cubicle next to you who used to be like, "Oh, your kids are so cute," and now he's coming to work with a Magna hat on. You know what I'm saying? Like now people are feeling more comfortable, and it's not even just black white racism. It's Christian versus Muslim. And the funniest thing is like I mentioned before, my mother was a minister, so my religious knowledge, though I don't claim myself a Christian, is deep, like super deep. And to watch all these people who espouse being Christians and then they behave the way they do, right? So that's so much more obvious and prevalent than it was in the 70s. Like people just it was improper. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, there was a lot of racial stuff happening, but it wasn't polite to be racist to somebody's face the way it is now.
Yeah,
And also I think the internet kind of emboldens people too.
I was just about to bring that in there. I think that I agree 100% with everything you said. I also think that it's I think that we have been, sheltered with how racism has been under the wraps for a long time, and then now it's been so in our face as far as well, it's always been there under the laws and under the injustice system. So it's always been there. But as far as the average person, like how you said it being in your face, it hasn't been that. And now that it's been that, it's kind of, I think it shocked the world.
Yeah.
We just recently had a black president.
Right.
So now to go from a black president.
But I think, honestly, that that's part of the backlash. I think that,
me too.
I had a client, and I will never forget. We were talking. I used to do diversity before I started doing the consulting I do now, and I was trying to explain to her like the reasons for diversity, supplier diversity programs and the motivations, and she said, "Well, racism's over. We have a black president." And I was like, well, no. And then she called him a sand nigger. She said those exact words. And then she said, you do know that he makes Congress bow down to the Muslim God. And I was like, first of all, how do you feel comfortable saying this to me? Like we're having this conversation like it's nothing. But she is the reason why that man is in office now. Because people like her were so upset. And I think the other thing too is that and this sounds arrogant and obnoxious, but a lot of people are stupid. There's it's not take away racism and whatever. There's also an intelligence bandwidth, right? And I think that there is a level, and if and I'm sorry if I'm insulting people, but I think there's a level where if you feel intimidated by somebody who speaks properly, you feel intimidated by somebody who's smarter than you. And I think that a lot of these people who have claimed the current president as their president do so because he speaks their language. He speaks in very, very simple diction. The other thing too is that the majority of politicians in this country start off as lawyers, right? Lawyers have a whole different language. They have a whole level of knowledge, right? And so I feel like a lot of these people in your rural towns or whatever, they're like, oh, I can't stand having somebody smarter than me. Like they love Trump because he speaks to them at their level and he doesn't make them feel stupid. I think Obama had so much elegance and so much class and such good diction and such good, you know what I'm saying? Like he really was an articulate orator that he made them feel bad about themselves.
A player.
Right. Oh yeah.
Motherfucking player.
Michelle Lucky. Let me tell you something right now. I've been peeping game on his pictures. I was like, damn, Obama. But why you got so much swag? Like, and I think that really, people like to feel superior. So when you could sit there and feel superior to the president because he's obviously got a very basic rudimentary kindergarten education, and can't, speak a proper sentence, I think that it makes them feel good about themselves, right? And I think that when Obama was in office, people felt like they felt like they were terrible, and then on top of it, he's black, right? Yeah.
So okay, with knowing about your upbringing, you also mentioned that you lived in Colorado. Colorado, was that for the work that you
Yeah,
did?
I was
Okay.
relocated there. I got hired by a company, and they moved me there, and then that's how I ended up here too. Is I had as a company hired me and relocated me here.
Okay, yeah, because I
So
was about to ask you what was got your transition there. So what? I mean, you mentioned when Ryan was living down the street, came to
right,
the house, and that relationship formed.
right.
When was it when they went from UFO to what you know now? What we know now is the dojo, and what people know you of as Miss Amy.
Well, so the house where the dojo is, I actually bought that house because I needed space because I was taking care of my mother, and she couldn't go up and down the stairs at my other house. So I had to find a house that had a downstairs bedroom, and so I bought the house. My mother lived with me, my grandmother lived with me, and when they both passed away, well, when my grandmother passed away first, and then when my mother passed away, I needed somebody to help take care of the house, and so I had somebody move in, and then that kind of started everything, and that's where Forever FC started. So then, because it was just me and Deja, my daughter, at the house, I didn't have the caretaking. The other thing too is that the way the house was laid out, that space that was my mother's, I actually had a room addition. So what you call the dojo had been my mother's apartment, basically. So it's 2 rooms that I had for her. So that space became like kind of open when she was gone, and so that ended up is what we turned into the studio, into the dojo. And then, like I said, people just kind of came on. So first it was UFO. Then it was freshman class, which was Jimmy Rell and Lute. And then they put Ryan on a song, and then that became Forever FC, which, really wasn't a group as much as a collective, because all 4 of them had their own thing. They all had independent projects. But they worked so well as a group that we kind of marketed that. And then, and then at the time, that's when TDE first came out. So it was kind of the same thing as ASAP or TDE, where, a bunch of like-minded, people work together. So so some people think Forever FC was a group. It never was a group. It was more of a brand and a collective that they were, and the plan had been to have that beat. We had FC Music, right? So that was the label, and then we transitioned it once Forever FC kind of disbanded. We transitioned it to 8910 Music. So I still own the record label. I still have a label. I don't have any artists really on it. I've kind of pulled myself out of the day-to-day management activities. But I can still do distribution if I want to. I definitely am still, like I said at the beginning, I'm still, the oracle with the cookies, where people come and talk to me, and I've gathered a lot of knowledge about the record industry in the last 6 years. Well, no, shoot, it's been like 10 years now. Gosh, that's a long time.
So
yeah, y'all are old now, huh? Because
yeah,
y'all was coming over when you was babies, and all y'all are hitting that big 3-0.
Yeah, I'm about to be 30 in a couple years. Yup, in a couple years, it's gonna.
Well, some people are already past 30.
Yeah, right. But I mean, they let them be old heads right now.
Yeah, I ain't gonna name names.
I'm gonna still be a young boy right now. So okay, with Forever FC and the success you've had with that, what was the point where you knew that you had something good with those guys with cultivating their talent? Incubating or cultivating. I don't know
so many
right
moments.
word.
First of all, like I said, I have an ear, and I'm a hip hop head. So I analyze music. I know what good beats are. I know what good lyrics are. I know if you can ride a beat, if you've got, cadence, if you've got tone, if you've got, there's so many things that go into being a good rapper. And, anybody who knows me will know that if I hear a song and it hits me, I'll start to cry. I'll be like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. So there was, all of them were amazingly talented. Rel did Foreign Places. That was an amazing project. Jimmy did City of Gods. What's interesting though is
City of Gods. That's sorry to cut you off, but that's when I got onto your City of Gods was fire.
City of Gods to this day. And the thing that's crazy is, I didn't listen to any of their music for a few years, and now with the shop being open and me being kind of getting back in the groove, I've been listening, and all of their music still holds today. Like, all of it still stands today, is still amazing. And I think my biggest, I can't even say it's a regret because it's nothing I did wrong, but I wish that people would have listened to me and taken me seriously, because had they followed my directive, so many things could have gone better. You know what I mean? Case in point, samples or production. And granted, some of the best songs, DUI, the song you're on, is like an amazing song. We never could do anything with it because the production was owned by somebody else, and we couldn't get it from them, right? So, if I would have, I think I knew enough to be able to say, hey, don't use sampled music. Don't, I was saying that back before it was even a thing. Like, now everybody kind of accepts it, but back then, and it's crazy now. I have friends in the industry that I could get things cleared today that I couldn't have gotten cleared before. But everybody, I can't think of a bad song that, if you go back and listen to the 704 project that they did, that was the Forever FC project. Mm-hmm. If you go back and listen to, so Ryan has one song. It's not a bad song, but there's like this ding in the beginning of the production that always gets on my nerves. But it's still a good song. His project's good. Friday is an amazing project. Friday is like, and I pride myself because I executive produced it. You know what I mean? Like, and people don't really
all these bags.
Well, but the thing is people don't realize like what a producer is in hip hop is different than what a producer is in rock music. If you watch that Deciders documentary with Dre and Jimmy Iovine's a producer. He doesn't make any music, mm-hmm. but he produces music because of you know what I mean. Like, he arranges it and all that stuff. And that's what I did with Friday. Ryan had done a bunch of really great songs, but none of them really, they were thematically different, right? Even the BPMs were different. And so we sat down and I said, there's a story here. And so we put them in story order, right? Instead of musical order. And then we spliced in skits to tie them together, and it's a whole story. If you listen to that from start to finish, and it's a funny story, right? It's basically the story of Ryan borrowing Lute's car, and then Lute falls asleep in the car, and him and Jimmy kidnap Lute and take him to New York to go buy weed. But like, you have to listen to the whole thing to get that story, mm-hmm. right? So, City, again, I said City of Gods, that's probably one of my favorites. But everybody did amazing work that still stands, and that's, I think, what I'm proud of. I wish that it was all happening now, because all eyes are on Charlotte right now.
Yes, it is.
God bless the baby. But
you were a pioneer of what inspired a lot of people, whether they knew Forever FC or what you were doing directly. It was a time period in Charlotte when everyone was like, okay, it was the older generation of and I don't really mean older in the sense where they are their time was past or anything
right.
like that, but they were just older than us in age.
Right.
The S-Dubs, the King Carters, the Mr. 704, yeah, like all of those people in royalty at the time, like a lot of those people were we were just a new scene that came onto it. We were the people that watched them and were inspired by them. Because we knew a lot of those people that I just named, like, directly. So when we came up, it was a perfect time.
Well, I think, Mylan Hightower, shout out to GT. He did an interview, I want to say it was like a year ago with This Is 50. And he brought me up in the interview, and he said that I coined the term lyrical trap, which I will proudly claim I did. But the reason I came up with that was because people would always ask us, what's the Charlotte sound? And what I realized, and again, I study it, right? I don't just talk off the top of my head. With the people that you named were very Southern, right? It was a very Southern sound. If you go back to P.D. Pablo and all of that was a whole sound in and of itself. the sound that we, and I say we as if I'm making music, but that Forever FC came out with, and Moolah, and all the Elevator J and all of that, even you bring De Niro in, all of that came about because there's such a New York influence. And I think it's, if I add my sociology study into it, when I came to Charlotte in 2000, there was this huge wave of new people moving to the city. So you had all of these companies, right? So the company that relocated me, the banks and all this, were bringing people in from all around, a lot of them from New York. Most of those people were y'all's parents, right? So a lot of kids were brought here. Ryan moved here when he was 6 because his mama had a job at TIA Cref, and they moved from New York here, right? He's a quintessential example of that. And so I think what happened is there's this huge New York flavor influence on your specific age group, right? Not the Mr. 704s and royalties, but your specific age group had this very New York influence. So also
that's true too,
and also too, you have this trap sound coming out of Atlanta around the same time. So the influence that you guys got was Atlanta and New York. So you get the lyricism and a little bit of the boom bap coming from here, but then you get this trap coming in here, and it intersected in Charlotte. And I think that was the theme that's really tied it together. And then if you take the baby, he's kind of, you know what I mean? Like he's that because the people, he's got bounce, right? So people can bounce in the club to it, and stripper, if a stripper can twerk, you got a hit. That's basically all there is to it, right? Either you sing along, in your car, or the stripper can twerk her ass. You got a hit. But a lot of that music was very vapid, was very lacking in content lyrically. You get all this New York stuff coming down where it's all about punchlines, it's all about metaphors, and so now you have people, because people love DaBaby because they can bounce and they can watch his videos and laugh, but he's saying something, right? People love Lute because Lute's got crazy lyrics, but Lute can ride any kind of beat. I've heard Lute, Lute's got his niche, but I've heard him on trap beats before, right? I've got the secret tapes. I'm not putting them out there, but I've got them in my vault. But I think that rappers in Charlotte especially have done that, and I think if we could do it again and put music out again, I keep telling Ryan, today's the day. Like, you need to jump on this. Jimmy says he's not going to rap anymore, so but he's making beats like crazy, right?
He's a super producer. I'm telling them I'm putting a stamp on it right now.
Right, he's a super producer. Like one of these days we're gonna have a hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that now is the time, and to tie this kind of back into the store, that's part of. I didn't realize it when I decided to open this store. You didn't even ask me the question, but I'm going to tell the story anyways.
Good.
I'm
just
going to take over. I know you talk back, but I'm taking over.
Yeah, but this is the good conversation that this is that I wanted this to be, for real.
But the store is my house is 140 steps. Like, you walk out that door and walk 140 steps, you're going to be at my house. The reason I got this space was because there was a point where I had 8 people living in my house, right? So all of Forever FC and all their girlfriends and all the strays and people whose parents kicked them out and people then who didn't have no place to be, and and I paid for people's phones, and God only knows what I did. That was crazy. So I had 8 people. I had 8 people living in my house, and I was like, "There's too many people." So I used to drive by these spaces and be like, "Yo, this would be a great space because I could put the studio downstairs and have office downstairs, and people could live upstairs because it's a 3-bedroom." And I would just, I'm a big manifester. I put stuff out and it happens crazy. So I would drive back and forth. So this summer, I actually had a really good year financially. So I had a little bit of money. And I remember my daughter and I went to Switzerland, and we were sitting there, and I'm like, oh, when we get home, I'm going to buy a Tesla. Like, I'm just going to buy a Tesla. I'm going to stack up and get a Tesla. This shop is my Tesla. Because 2 weeks after we got back, I'm driving down the street, and there's a sign that one of these spaces is available, which they never, hardly ever is the upstairs and downstairs both available. Usually it's just the downstairs or just the upstairs. And so I hit them up and they're like, oh, yeah, we worked it out. I got the space. And I had no idea what I was going to do with it. Like, at first I was like, oh, I'll make a smoke shop so I don't have to, I can get backwoods wholesale, right? Because the backwoods budget in my house is insane. We are 420 friendly. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'll do a tea shop or, and I didn't really know what I was creating here. And this literally has been little ideas popping in my head. But now that it's kind of put together, I realized I kind of recreated the dojo here just without the smoking. And I did it, one, as a place of community. Yeah, I would love for people to come buy Funko Pops and DCCIV shirts and, Fagos. That would be great.
That's going to happen, honestly.
Please come and buy stuff from my shop.
There you go.
But it's also been a place for people to come and hang out and talk and meet each other and connect people. Jamonte, a.k.a. Callis, had his listening party here, and we had a good 50 probably people, and a lot of them had never met each other. Lillian Blanche just had her birthday private invitation party here, and a bunch of people came and who had never met each other. So I feel like it's the culture.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but you also allowed the Sanctuary podcast in here.
Yes,
also.
I've allowed the podcast to be here. But it's, I say it's a hip hop culture shop because the vibe that I want to have is very hip hop, and the products that I have is very hip hop related. But it's also a gathering place that, as far as I know, really doesn't exist in this city. I know that Camp North End has some shops and people kind of gather there, but Camp North End is also at the whole other side of town. I'm in North Charlotte, so I'm closer to Concord Mills, Mallard Creek High School, North Mech High School. I'm actually even closer to UNCC than Camp North End is, distance-wise.
Right.
So this is, I'm not going to say it's the only place for people to hang out in the whole city. That's not true. But it's the only place of its kind in this side of town. And, the concept, I think, is very different. I've not really been any place where you can sit and hang out, right? Most places you can come and shop, and you can come get some shoes, and you can get a couple T-shirts, but you're not going to chill and hang out
and things to eat
and have,
snacks,
and watch TV.
Right.
We play videos. I have a 1970s era turntable stereo. Did you see my boombox? I just got a boombox.
Oh yeah, I did see it right there.
Yeah, and the reason I got it is because I had the cassettes, and I'm like, I just have all these cassettes sitting here because they look cool, but I want to play them. I want to, and I actually think I have some mixed cassettes from like the 80s at my house. I might come
that you made yourself.
Yeah. What are you talking about? I got I got Color Me Bad over there. What are you talking about? I got The Time over there. I got I got the classics. I wish I still had my CDs. I had a whole bunch of CDs and they got stolen because this is so crazy. I dated this guy this is like the fourth time I've said I've dated a guy. But I dated this guy and he worked for a record label. This was in like 1985, and I had the promo copy of EPMD Paid in Full. No, that's Eric B. and Rakim. EPMD. No, I had an EPMD and I had Eric B. and Rakim. I had both of them. But they were like, back in the day with vinyls, if you had the promo copy, they would cut it, like the thing, so you'd have like a cut in it, so you'd always know it was a promo copy, right? And so what they would do is they would give the A&R guys the promo copies to pass out. And I used to have promo copies of like...
You're telling me something new. I don't... Yeah, that was before my time.
I'm an old head.
Yeah, I was alive, obviously, but I wasn't, able to be maneuvering that way.
No, I was maneuvering. I was it's so crazy. I didn't understand what I was experiencing at the time I experienced it. But like one of my great stories is that I went to see DJ Quick in concert because I was a huge fan. I love DJ Quick. And I went to go see him in Long Beach at a concert, and the opening act was Dre and Snoop before Snoop had dropped Doggy Style. And he brought Snoop out, like Dre was the opening act, and he brought Snoop out because they had just finished recording.
Wow.
And I was there. And then I also saw Wu-Tang before 36 Chambers dropped because they came to LA and did it. So I used to like go to concerts all the time, and I had no idea like the historical, significance of what I was doing at the time. I probably would have gotten better T-shirts or something if I would have known that. But
well, let me ask you this: so because currently, obviously, you're busy with the shop. What made you step away from the music?
PTSD.
Do you care to talk about the PTSD?
I mean, it's really painful. I put a lot of my time, an enormous amount of my money, all of my love, and all of my energy into people, and it. I think retrospectively people appreciate it. There's people have come back and said that they appreciated the stuff that I did, but I think that, and again, this is retrospectively, I think that I was dealing with a lot of children at the time. You got to figure, when Ryan first came in my house, he was 14 and he's 30 now. And not saying that Ryan was a problem. Ryan was a child. I'm just saying he was the he was the first one.
Yeah,
he was the first person through the door.
Right.
And so, and also I have to take into account the black male ego, right? God bless y'all, and I love my black men, but y'all got some issues sometimes, right? And I think that, and then all, the whole, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit, right? So you take all of those things into account, and you have people who had no idea what they were doing. And I'm not saying that I knew exactly what I was doing, but I have been around a little bit longer. I read a lot, and I
experience.
I had a natural inclination towards how things should go. So even the thing like with samples, me saying, hey, don't use samples, and people saying, well, I'm going to do what I want to do. Okay, well, then you suffer the consequences of it. You can't be mad at me that your song can't be played on the radio because you didn't want to listen to me. Or, and like I said, I realize now I was more of a record label because managers don't put money into artists, right? If you go listen to Wendy Day, and if I have one piece of advice to everybody who watches this, go to Wendy Day on YouTube and watch her 2020 Vision series, because will tell you everything you ever want to know about the music industry. You can learn from her. But one of the things she talks about is what the manager's role is. And the manager is not supposed to fund your career. They're not supposed to pay for your studio time. They're not supposed to pay for your clothes. They're not supposed to pay for your flight to New York or any of those things. That's what the record label does. So I initially called myself a manager and had this idea that I was a manager, but really I was a record label. That being said, when the record label is paying you, you do what the record label says, right? You don't necessarily do what your manager says, because technically speaking, your manager is supposed to work for you. Mm-hmm. But that means you're paying your manager. So if you're not paying me and I'm paying you, then you work for me, right? And I don't think that was ever fully understood or discussed, because the whole thing started out of love, and the whole thing started out of the godmother scenario of, I'm a nurturer and I'm going to take care of you,
but
and
things became business. So.
Right. Well, there's and one of the complaints though that I had gotten was that I was too personal, that I couldn't separate the personal and the business. My thing is, if you are under the age of 25 or even 30, you have never worked in business, right? The only job you ever had was Walmart or delivering newspapers. You can't talk to me about what business is supposed to be, right?
No, I completely understand.
Right,
that.
And I always used to use the story that I was, when I worked for a multi-billion-dollar company, I was sitting in a meeting with the CEO of the company, and he got mad and he picked up a computer and threw it against the wall. So me stomping up the stairs and slamming a door because I'm mad doesn't mean I'm lack professionalism, or doesn't mean that I'm not about business, right? People are people. You're always going to deal with people and business and people's personalities. Not saying that my door slamming was the best of my character,
or even that you're trying to justify. But
right,
I completely understand what you're saying.
But you can't sit there and say that I don't know how to handle business, or I am not professional because one time I got mad at you and I slammed a door, right? So I think, what happened was I had an expectation of, if I am managing your career, not your manager, but managing your career, which as the record label, that's what I'm doing. I'm making sure that you have opportunities. I'm making sure that you're in the right place at the right time. I'm making sure the bills get paid. I'm making sure I'm making sure all these things are happening. My expectation that you let me know when you book a show is not out of line. My expectation that you follow the plan that we've put together, because we've sat down and we've had a plan and we've said, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And then you decide to just go off on your own and do your own thing without even having enough respect to talk to me. That's a problem, right? And I think that there was a lack of respect for me. I don't know if it was because of my age. Oh, she's so old, she doesn't know, she doesn't understand. I think people now, like I said, I think now that y'all have all grown up, there's a new appreciation for me that wasn't there when everybody was 17.
Yes, and I think it's just only on interject on that part, because I think that when you're young and you're immature and you don't know things, you don't first appreciate yourself. So in return, you can't really appreciate something that someone else is doing for you all the way. It's hard to do. Like it's even now where I still tell you to this day, I thank you for things that you've done for me a long time ago, and that you continue to now, because I've grown to realize, first of all, she don't have to do anything. Be appreciative, and it's just simple as that. Just be appreciative.
And
so
I think that's what to your point about I don't have to do anything. I don't think that was really understood. I have one child. I have one biological child. That's the only person who I owe anything to. The damn near $500,000 that I have invested in the youth of Charlotte at any given time, and the rappers in Charlotte, and there's more than Forever FC that came through my door that I invested in financially. For there to be anything negative said about me, or one of the things that came back to me was that I like to control everything. Oh, don't deal with Miss Amy because she likes to control everything. You know what? At one point I was like apologetic for that. Today, fuck that. Yeah, if I'm putting money, if I'm paying for your studio time, sir, then I have the right to listen to that music and give you my opinion. One thing I will say is I never dictated anybody's creativeness, right? I would give my feedback and I would say, hey, you know what, your voice sounds this way, or maybe you might want to try this, but ultimately every artist that has ever come through my door who had me manage them or was on the label, whatever, you still get to do whatever you want to do creatively. That being said, I don't have to put any more money behind it, right? If your song is trash and I think your song is trash and it's not going to go anywhere, you can't demand that I pay for your video to get done, right? Or the
record label wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
Literally, if he was signed to a major label and they didn't think that the song would be good, they're not going to put money behind it.
Exactly. And
it's called a budget.
The thing that would kill me is I had one artist who complained that they didn't want to come to my house to have conversations with me because I lived too far out. My thing is, if Jimmy Iovine signs you, are you going to tell Jimmy Iovine that he has to take an Uber to come visit you? No, you're going to get in your car and go to the label offices. Mm-hmm. You're going to go to the label offices, on Broadway. I know where Universal Music Group offices are. You're going to go there and have those conversations, right? So I think that was, and I will take full responsibility that I was so focused on being the loving godmother that I didn't explain to people. Like, I assumed that people understood that, right? I assumed that if you knew that if I was investing money in you, that I got to have a say in what happened, or you should never have taken my money, right? And a lot of people owe me money still, like a lot. That being said, I'm not sending out invoices because that was my choice to do that. My choice was to invest in you and to do that. Now, the fact that you still can't say thank you, the fact that you can't say you're sorry, the fact that you can't speak well of me in the community is a problem. I think, but like I said, there's a lot of people, especially in this last year, that have come back and said those things, have come back and said, I'm sorry, have come back and said, you know what, now that I'm out in the world, I see everything you warned me about, and I realize how right you are. That's all I wanted. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't necessarily want the money back, though. If you make it big and this, jumps off, I would expect a check. Thank you very much. I'm not saying I'm not taking donations and money and reimbursement, but that's not my. But that's my expectation. You know what I mean? Like, you just saying that you appreciate me, then I'm like, okay, it wasn't wasted. It wasn't lost what I did. But yeah, to answer your question, I think that I was so hurt and so devastated by not just the rejection and the removal of people, but what I found out later was said about me, that there was a point in time where nobody would talk to me. Like I couldn't make any moves. I had, you know, a lot of my connections just dried up and disappeared. Come to find out, it was because things were said about me. You know, like the whole. It's kind of like in Hollywood when the blacklist happened. You know what I mean? It was like that, and I could never understand what I did that was so wrong. Like, what did I do to you that was so horrible and terrible when I paid your phone bill? I gave you a roof over your head. I fed you. I took you on trips. I showed you things that you would have never seen if you had not been a part of my life. For years, for you to go around and say things about me and try to ruin me and destroy all chances I had of living my dream, which was to be involved in music. I completely pulled back and I just focused on my daughter. I focused on making money. There was a point in time where I'm a consultant. So if I don't have clients, I don't have money. There was a point in time I had spent so much effort on the music side that I hadn't been cultivating the client side. And I had a good 6-8 months of no income. Right? That was devastating, especially because had I been banking and being a good little squirrel and holding on to my money instead of paying for people to go to New York and Miami and, you know, concerts and whatnot, I would have been fine. So I spent years kind of focusing on getting that financial, you know, base back up again. And I worked with a few artists here and there, and I got burned again. You know what I mean? It's not like it wasn't just one time. It was a number of times that I got burned. But I feel like now this shop kind of fulfills what I wanted to do for the community, without me having to be invested in any person. Right.
And I was just going to bring that up because, I mean, I was going to say that all the pain that you endured then, does the shop give you, you know, restore that joy?
Yeah, I mean, I wish, you know, what I'm hoping, we have the grand opening next week.
Well, the corner. I'm not going to call it the shop anymore. The corner.
We call it the shop at home.
Yeah,
at the
yes,
home.
Right,
we do.
Right,
we call it the shop.
People need to know what it is.
Yeah, it's the corner. At the corner CLT, if you want to find us on social media. The grand opening is a week from Saturday. Well, today is the 20th, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No, today is the 19th. Today's the 19th.
So I don't know when this will be broadcast, but the 29th is the grand opening. We have the tiniest art gallery in the South, within the building. And we're having Distorted which is you know, crazy circle of life. Back when I was trying to brand Goudy House, which is the parent company of the record label, I sponsored Distorted's show at 12:12.
Okay, I didn't know you.
Right?
Okay,
yeah.
I was there.
I was there too. That was an interesting night.
Yeah. Yes. To say the least.
I knew of her and she knew of me, and so she's gonna do the first gallery show, starting on the Thursday, and then Saturday is our grand opening, so it's open to the public. And I'm hoping after that once word gets out that people know it's here, that I'll start seeing faces come through, right? And that's good. You know, even the people who have come through so far, you know, I've had at least 4 or 5 people who I haven't seen in years, right? So there was a guy who came through, I want to say it was Rizzy Raps, came through, and he was like, Miss Amy, like, I haven't seen you in years. And I was like, yeah, I was being a hermit. But, you know, it's been nice to kind of reconnect with a lot of the people, because that's one thing I love. Charlotte, I've got Charlotte gear galore. DCCIV means 704. So, you know, I love representing the city. I love elevating the city and being able to help any creative. Now it's not. That's one thing that's nice about the shop, is now it's not just music. Now it's artists. No, oh, okay. Now it's artists. It's any creatives. You know, taggers. You know, people who do spoken word. Singers, you know, anybody can come through here and have a space to do what they want to do. So yes, I guess in answer to your question.
Okay, well, you did answer my question. I mean, honestly, it seems like we've covered Miss Amy. I mean, we got your upbringing. I mean, views on the current social climate. We little bit of that. I mean, it's not a political show, so we won't
Right.
get into any of that. But just we've covered Miss Amy. I
Yay!
mean, yes. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for continuing to do what you do with the corner. Also, just with your kind and good heart.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for the appreciation, because it means a lot.
my pleasure. But I mean, you know what it is. You know what it ain't. It's your boy Fly Shade Ray. You know my name. You know my gang, and I'm out. So thank you, Miss Amy.
Bye.
We out of here.